Donald Trump is just a disaster. He's he's dangerous and a disaster. And Roe versus Wade really is just represents one little part of his danger.
Iowa's main claim to political fame was to be the first state where the two main parties start choosing their presidential candidates. The rest of the time, it's largely ignored nationally as a solidly red rural state whose entire congressional delegation is Republican. Donald Trump won it by 8 points in 2020, and neither party regards it as a swing state. Then at the weekend, the state's leading newspaper, the Des Moines Register, whose polls are widely respected, published its final poll showing Harris 3 points ahead at 47 to 44%, powered by a surge of support among independent women voters. Now, this, of course, is what Democrats hope will take them to victory tomorrow. But is it real, or is the poll just an outlier? Because there's no equivalent poll in any other state that we've seen. We're going to hear from one of Mr. Trump's pollsters in a moment, but first let's speak to Marcie Paul. She's chair of Fems for Dems, based in Michigan. Marcie, welcome to the program. You've been campaigning on women's reproductive rights after the Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe v. Wade. It's clearly a very important issue for many people. What's the evidence, though, that it's the decisive issue for how they'll vote?
Evidence every time Roe versus Wade or reproductive rights have been on the ballot since the Dobbs decision, it's won. It did from the first election after the decision all the way through every ballot initiative that we've seen, even in very, very red states. So that's about all the evidence anyone could possibly have.
So you're talking about ballots where after Roe v. Wade, a number of states had essentially referenda on
Sure.
their own abortion rules, and in every state, as you say, even in red states, there were votes in favor of a relatively liberal regime. But the only issue on the ballot in these referenda was the abortion issue. It's not on the ballot in this election. It's one of many issues: the economy, immigration, cost of living, and so on. It has to vie with these. And what I'm wondering is, for people, where is it in the pecking order of these issues?
Well, obviously, it depends on who. But what I meant is when it's on, during the midterms, it prevented the red wave that everyone was predicting. Still, candidates won on that issue, and it is on the ballot in a number of states. But that said, I think there's never one overwhelming issue.
No.
But I think for women, it is something that's extremely important, and you see it in the number of women that are coming out so far. So whether it's a winner or not, we're still seeing record turnout amongst women.
Indeed,
so
we
that's
have.
still an indication.
And in the early voting, there are more women than men have voted.
Correct.
Have you seen? You've been campaigning in Michigan. Have you seen evidence of among moderate Republican women in the suburbs and the exurbs? Have you seen evidence they might not have liked Mr. Trump very much in the first place, and the Roe v. Wade mean they like him even less? Do you have evidence yet that these moderate Republican women are moving to vote for Harris because of this issue?
I've talked to several. If that's evidence, I don't have a crystal ball, but
No,
I
it's
will
good anecdotal
say,
evidence, though.
I will say that many have told me it's a strong motivating factor. Is it strong enough? I guess we're going to see. But there's also the fact that I think what else is driving people is just the fact that there's Donald Trump is just a disaster. He's he's dangerous and a disaster. And Roe versus Wade really is just represents one little part of the of his danger.
Marcie Paul, we'll leave it there. So the Harris campaign in a latest poll in Iowa, 3 points ahead. Bit of a surprise there, if it's accurate. The Harris campaign saying they detect a late swing to her, particularly among women. But the national poll of polls showing Trump on 48.5, Harris on 48.4. It really doesn't get much closer than that. And that is better for Mr. Trump than at this stage in the 2016 campaign, which he won, and the 2020 campaign, which he lost. So where are we? Let's speak to John McLaughlin. He runs a consultancy firm that has been doing polling for Donald Trump. He joins us now. Welcome to the show, John McLaughlin.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
The Iowa poll, it's highly respected. The woman who does it's highly respected. It's got a track record of being more accurate than most polls, I think. What do you make of it?
Well, the Des Moines Register has never really liked Donald Trump. And you do know that 4 years ago in Iowa, the Republicans outnumbered the Democrats by 10 points in the actual turnout. And that's according to the CNN exit polls. This poll was only +2 Republicans. What they did was they didn't use a voter list. They randomly dialed adults, and they screened for likely voters, and then they later weighted it by gender, sex, and congressional district. Now, normally you know ahead of time what those are, and you call accordingly. So if you weight it to the past turnout of presidential elections in Iowa, Trump would be up 50 to 44, according to Fair Poll, which is on X, which is on Twitter. So, and by the way, there was an Emerson College poll taken the same time, released the same day, had Trump winning 53-43. We are going to win Iowa. And the national polls that we've never been in a position like this before, where I've been with President Trump since he started playing this race back in 2011. And in 2016, it was a Hillary lock. There was a 71% chance we were going to lose on election day. We were losing all the national polls. We were losing the battleground states. And then 2020 was the same thing. It was a Biden blue wave. We were down 10 points on election day, according to NBC, and losing every battleground state. So, and it was a Biden blue wave, allegedly. But we're in a good position.
I think I guess you're right. The Republicans will hold Iowa. I'd be amazed if they don't. But I guess we're taking the poll a little seriously, because I look at the poll, the same pollster who did the Senate race in 2022. That poll gave the Republicans a 12-point victory margin. The actual victory margin was 12 points. Or the presidential race in 2020. She gave, I say she because it's a woman who runs these polls, a Republican lead of 7 points. Mr. Trump's actual lead was 8 points. And I guess it's with that sort of track record, you're inclined not just to completely dismiss what she's found now.
Well, you could go to the Des Moines Register and you could look at the demographics of those polls, and they were more Republican and more accurate. You can go to the Des Moines Register and click on and try to find this poll, and there's, they really don't release. They just say they waited to census, and census is not actual vote. So they're not really transparent with the results. And the Des Moines Register editorial board does not like Donald Trump.
But they don't fix the polls. They don't. They say go and do a poll that shows that Kamala Harris is ahead in Iowa.
Well, they sponsored that poll, and I'm telling you, it's different than those other polls in the construction of the demographics and bias.
I understand that. Mr. Trump attacked the woman behind the polls yesterday, claiming the poll constituted suppression and should be illegal. Whether the poll's right or not, and my guess, like yours, is it's probably a bit of an outlier, but to say things like that is dangerous nonsense, is it not?
Well, you got to look at the history of what's gone on in polling in the United States. The pollsters were significantly off in 2016 and 2020. And you have instances where 4 years ago, a week before the election, the Washington Post put out a poll. We were down 17 points in Wisconsin. And I had the president call me in the morning and he said, "What's this poll? Has me down 17?" I said, "It's a bad poll. 8 points, 2 more points too Democratic. The independents are funky, and and he says, why would they put out a poll like that? I said, look, they're smart people. They're full of PhDs. 2-1, the mail-in ballots are voting for the Democrat for Joe Biden at the time. 2-1, the election day voters are voting for Donald Trump. I said, they know if they put out a poll and you're down 17, they're going to discourage Trump voters from coming out and vote. And we know it's a toss-up. You're going to have to go back there. And out of 3 million votes, by the way, President Trump says, why would they do that? I said, at the time, Washington Post hates you. So, but he said, but I'm just saying, look at the election results. In Wisconsin, they had us down 17. 3 million votes were cast. We only lost by 20,000 votes. There's a history of left of center media in the United States sponsoring polls that underpolled Trump voters, and they admitted it in both last elections.
But let's just look at this morning's poll of polls and Real Clear Politics. That doesn't seem to show a left-wing bias at all. The poll of polls is Trump 48.5, Harris 48.4. I mean, it's even Stevens. It's a dead heat. And that, I would suggest, is actually good news for Mr. Trump. It's better than where he was in 2016. It's better than where he was in 2020. If these polls are right, then he's looking good.
Yes, and I would have to. A lot of these pollsters have amended their methodology. And by the way, the national polls of 1,000 people are plus or minus 3%, 19 times out of 20. So you have it to get up one, down one. It's the same poll. And really, what's really instructive, if you go back to 2012, Mitt Romney was ahead a week out from the election by a point in the national popular vote over Barack Obama. And we had bad hurricanes that year in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. And Romney kept flying over those states. Obama comes in and hugs Chris Christie, brings federal aid. And all of a sudden, Obama goes ahead Sunday night in the polls by a point. Monday night stays ahead. And he wins the election by 4 points. So tomorrow is a very critical day on turnout because, yes, the polls have us all close now, but tomorrow is actual turnout. So you have 77 million voters who have already voted in the United States. We had 160 million vote 4 years ago, and that was a record, up from 139 million in 2016. So tomorrow is a very big day as far as turnout, but it's a very close race. And I'm saying that if we get the right turnout, Donald Trump wins.
So are you anxious then that the Republicans seem to have outsourced their grand campaign to groups like Turning Point, activist groups, or even to Elon Musk, whereas the Democrats are doing it themselves? Could they not be better at getting their vote out?
Well, that's a very good question because 4 years ago, the Republicans were saying, I was on these calls with the Republican National Committee, and they're saying, gee, we don't see any signs of the Biden campaign, and we're door knocking. I mean, they were door knocking during COVID. And the Biden campaign used nonprofits to generate the turnout, whether they were labor or labor unions, et cetera. They killed us in turnout. And the Republican National Committee was an anachronism because now in the United States, you have such early voting that it's really, you gotta go collect the ballots, get people in ahead of time. Like over 80% of the vote has already been cast in Arizona, Nevada, the battleground states, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. There's, you've got like almost 2 million votes counted already that are absentees. So it's like the idea of nonprofits doing it. And by the way, that doesn't even mention 4 years ago, Mark Zuckerberg had a nonprofit that spent $400 million in voter turnout that was not in our favor. So fortunately, we don't have that up against us, but the Democrats are using nonprofits. A lot of them are funded by people like George Soros, et cetera, and they're getting out the vote that way. Whether it's congressional races, Senate races, or the presidential race, there's lots of evidence of that across this, and that's fair. That's by the rules. And the Republicans having these nonprofits, whether it's being funded by Elon Musk or other donations, it's fair according to the rules to drive out vote that way. So, and because of the campaigns have a different set of fundraising rules.
Sure.
So it's actually, you can actually raise and spend more when the nonprofits do it, and then the individual campaigns, than using the campaign money that's precious,
Right.
because we're getting outspent on TV.
Well, let me ask you this about the campaign: the economy, immigration, cost of living. These are the issues that the polling tells us could win Trump the election. And Kamala Harris struggles with all three. We've seen that through the campaign. But Mr. Trump, he can't stick to the script. He wanders off into shooting Liz Cheney, shooting the media. He shouldn't have left. No, hold on, let me finish the question. Shouldn't have left the White House in January 2021. Harris is dumb. He drives a garbage truck. I mean, he just can't help himself. I mean, you speak to Mr. Trump regularly. Don't you urge him, please, Mr. President, stick to the script and you'll win?
Well, can you read me the Liz Cheney quote you mentioned that he said?
Oh, no, I know what the Liz Cheney quote is. I know exactly what it is.
No, seriously. It's not what you said. It's not what they took.
No, I know, but it's how it's being presented, and he knew how it would be presented. But anyway, what's the answer to my question?
The answer to your question is he does stick to the script. Every rally that he's done, he did 3 yesterday, he's doing 3 today. He says, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And the crowd, these tens of thousands of people, resoundingly say no, because
and that's the Reagan question. That's the famous Reagan question.
And it's true today, because 70% of Americans say we're on the wrong track. And the number one issues are inflation. They want inflation reduced. They want the border secured, because the border is wide open now. We've taken tens of millions of illegal immigrants. Crime is going up because of that. And then you also have these endless wars that the United States is spending, hundreds of billions of dollars to help Israel and to help Ukraine. But when President Trump was there, we didn't have these. We beat ISIS, and if our enemies didn't like us, they feared us.
All right. So, John McLaughlin, I've got one final question for you, which I think you can answer in a sentence. What's the result going to be?
The result is, if we have a good turnout tomorrow, Donald Trump wins decisively. But it all depends upon tomorrow, because half the vote has not voted yet, according to the website. And polls are not good predictions of the turnout, but hopefully we get our turnout tomorrow.
Well, that's a clear answer. We'll see what the turnout is. John McLaughlin, pollster for Donald Trump, thanks for joining us here on Times Radio.